probably wrong about these things because I fully understand the logical side of my brain is telling me that I'm being too emotional about this. It's just that, like I said, it's just I can't ignore the empathetic side of my brain where it's just like I just want to see something happen. Maybe even if it's again, I just want to see something happen where we see I see this country actually doing something to take care of the people that are currently dying.
All right, so I'm assuming you're not going to be as aggressive, or maybe you will be, but in your comment to me under my post, you said, I'm not a progressive, and also I am not an ally to progressives. So if you can elaborate
Yes.
on that, and then maybe give me your argument to respond to.
Yes. The reason why I said that you're not a progressive is because I'm a little bit more stringent on that. And when I what I mean by not a progressive is someone who basically is seems someone like you and others who have made the similar arguments during this whole force the vote thing, even though it's officially over as of today, as Nancy Pelosi was officially reelected to speakership. But the whole point of my argument about who is and who isn't a progressive in my eyes was someone who is going to, as far as I see it, fight for Medicare for all as much as possible. Whereas from what I heard from your videos, again, I'm not a subscriber to yours. I only ran across your videos because they were recommended to me via the YouTube algorithm. Is that it seemed like you were basically saying, especially during a global pandemic that we are still in, that right now is not the right time for Medicare for all, and it just started sounding a lot like, well, the same thing that I would expect to hear out of Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, which is, oh, it's pie in the sky. It sounds great, but not right now. Definitely not right now.
Okay, so what I focus on in politics right now is getting political influence, and also, in order to get that influence, understanding what voters are thinking. And the fundamental issue with the force the vote argument is literally everybody who is for it doesn't understand how much of the party is actually for Medicare for all. They don't understand how much of a constituency there actually is, like when it comes to voters who are demanding Medicare for all. So they always bring up the poll, oh, 90% of the party agrees with Medicare for all, when in reality, only half the party chooses Medicare for all as their number one option. Half the party also chooses a public option as their number one option. Although some voters like both options, in many instances, people choose the public option over Medicare for all. And there's many polls on that. I had a video a couple days ago on that topic. So that's one of the big foundational reasons they support force the vote, because they think, oh, if we force a vote, then politicians' feet will be held to the fire. But it won't be, because you need the voters on your side first to pressure those politicians. And we are going against big money. So you need immense people power that can actually threaten these politicians' positions of power. And if their voters are for a public option, they're technically going with, in coordinates with what their voters want them to do. So it's a big misunderstanding of where the party really is on it. I do support Medicare for all. I support universal health care. But in order for that to actually happen, we're going to need such a widespread organized labor movement, and also a societal shift in public opinion, an immense difference from where we are right now, to ever actually get that done through the House, through the Senate, and through the presidency. It's going to be a long, hard process. And I don't want to, sound defeatist when I say that Medicare for all probably isn't going to happen realistically for another 10 to 12 years in the US. But that's where we are right now with our current trajectory.
Yes. Trust me, I do get that argument. You weren't, like I said, you weren't the only one making that argument. There were two splits in the leftist ranks when it came to this whole force the vote thing. I just happened to be on the opposing side, what it sounds like to yours, which is that we should have definitely did when we had the chance, at least try it. And the reason I supported that side is because let's just be honest, I'm more for aggressive tactics. I'm more for I will just point out that yeah, I am a revolutionary. I would rather see progressives and Justice Democrats do stuff that is super aggressive, because what really gets me is that right now we're the whole normal thing for the Democratic Party is to be defeated. is to go along to get along and all of that. Whereas you look at the Republicans and they're willing to attempt to try to get rid of Obamacare like 50, 60 times, how many times they tried. And I just sit there and go, I would love to see that, but for Democrats. I would love to see that, but for Medicare for all, where it's like, okay, because one of your arguments that you said in the previous debate was, well, if it does pass, if it does get a floor vote, it will get defeated. Okay, then we just try again and try again. How many times, the Republicans try everything that they want to do? Again, to this day, Donald Trump literally just had a call about how he's still basically the winner and he won the election. He still has supporters in the Republican ranks for that.
But his political power in the Republican Party is so immense right now, and progressives have little to no political power in the Democratic Party. We need to take over the party in order to wage some type of power like that. And in order to take over the party, that's why you see AOC doing stuff like playing really nice with Nancy Pelosi, calling her mama bear. She doesn't like Nancy Pelosi. She probably hates Nancy Pelosi, but she's doing that because she doesn't want to lose Nancy Pelosi's voters, because those people are essential in order for progressives to gain control of the party. You can disagree with that, but in our system, the only ways to create progress is within the two major power structures. Is how our system is, built. Is how it's going to operate into the near future. And that's what they are trying to do with that. You can disagree. You could say they should be more aggressive, but it doesn't help to be more aggressive if the attacks you're landing are not going to be very pointed. If they're not going to be, disciplined attacks, like force the vote. If you bring up, I am for using their votes to get other concessions like different rule changes and stuff like that, which they did. I wasn't for forcing the Medicare for all vote because the public opinion isn't there. It probably would have backfired. And one big reason that Democrats don't like Medicare for all is because they don't think it's going to pass and it's not popular. I don't think having a vote that loses by 300 in the House is going to help the public perception of how pragmatic progressives are into the future. That's a big issue with progressives. They're pie in the sky. They're too emotional. They don't know how to actually get things done.
Yes, and like I said, I'm listening to all these arguments. Again, the rubber that meets the road for me is the whole fact that we see that these strategies do work, across the political aisle for the Republicans, but like for whatever reason, us on the left, we don't ever want to try any stuff that has been shown to work, because it's like, yeah, you say that it's again. That, for example, Donald Trump, well, his power base is immense. Doesn't stop Mitch McConnell from going against Donald Trump if he wants to. Mitch McConnell is more than willing to go against Donald Trump and say,
with all the power he has, Mitch McConnell can still say, F you, I'm doing what I want, because of how our government operates, and we need to get control of a party in order to bypass that restraint. Think about how our government is set up. The Senate right now is based off of land, 100% land. Missouri, Alabama, all these states that drain our federal budget, all these conservative states, this Senate is not going to be able to even be somewhat acceptable for Medicare for all into the future. Maybe the Supreme Court will strike it down. But when it comes to, let me just focus on the Senate really quick. The only way to create a system in which we can get Medicare for all passed is if we can eliminate the Republican Party and remove that threat so that Joe Manchin becomes the most far-right person in our Senate. That's the only way Medicare for all is ever going to pass our Senate in American, in the near history, with how our government is set up, unless if you're planning on bypassing those systems somehow, if you're thinking there's going to be a mass protest on Washington because of healthcare. I don't know if that's what you think is going to happen or not, but your microphone's kind of... Oh, can you restart, please?
Am I sounding better, or is my microphone still sounding like it? Okay. But what I was gonna say is, the whole protest thing that you brought up, it could happen. I could easily see it happening. Just like anything could happen. I definitely did not think that Black Lives Matter would have gotten literally worldwide protests. No one could have expected that when it first started. But
that's consistent with history, right? the Black Lives Matter stuff. Like right now, okay, just I'm sorry for cutting you off, but just really quick,
No, it's fine.
the $600 stimulus checks right now were debated for 4 months, and this is something that 80% of the American public strongly agreed upon. And we are in desperate times, and 0 people took to the streets for stimulus checks. And the healthcare industry is very, very good at managing privilege and managing struggle. Of course, I'm sure you're familiar with it being revolutionary. Like, of course, they
Yeah.
make sure that people don't have enough food to actually revolt, and they don't have but they don't actually starve or whatever the quote is. So they're really good at that. So yeah, I don't know if that. I mean, maybe if something crazy would ruin our society or something, but I don't know.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is that the reason I say I'm not completely settled on that there definitely is going to be a revolt in the streets is again the reason I bring up Black Lives Matter is because the fact is like that may be true for American history. But like to see literal Black Lives Matter by name protests in other countries around the world was striking. It wasn't something I definitely expected again the first day that the protest started. But when it comes to Medicare, I think that it could be, begin people could begin protesting because right now we're not in the deep of it, but we're staring down the barrel because we still in some states, including my own. I live in Oregon, including my own. We still have eviction moratoriums, but when those moratoriums are up, people will have massive bills that because these bills don't they just keep stacking. Right now, anyone who hasn't been paying their rent, their rent is just stacking to a point where once these eviction moratoriums are up, not only will they not have their employer tied health care, they won't even have a house to live in. And we're gonna enter a 1930s era again where I could definitely see revolting because what else are you going to do? What else to do than sleep in your tent all
But they
day
would do
if
that
you
for
even
like
have
rent, for example, and also say there's a big medical debt crisis. They can easily just say the government, if they were pressured with a mass protest, say that would happen, which is very unlikely compared to civil rights protesting. Americans are really bad at it. Of course, we know that. It's just they can literally say we're gonna erase your debt at that point. They won't decommodify healthcare just because people are in the streets. They'll find another way to bypass it. In order to create this structural progressive change, we're literally gonna need all facets of society organized in a certain direction. Like we're literally trying to decommodify an entire or 1/5 of the American economy. This isn't just going to happen. They're not going to be happy about it. They're going to lash out and make sure the program fails, for example, like the Tories do with with the NHS very often, trying to defund it and then blaming the NHS for its failures that the Tories caused. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of hurdles to that. We're going to need majority report. Majority report. Oh my God, slip of the tongue. Yeah, lib report. But that's funny. We're going to need majority support for Medicare for All, even in the Republican Party. Right now, only half of Democrats choose Medicare for All as their #1 policy for healthcare when they have an option between the two. It's around half. And I don't know if you refute that, but that's what like one thing that I think is really harmful to any left organization, to any left progress, is if like Breonna Joy Gray, for example, or Jimmy Dore or Kyle Kalinske, they have said things like, we don't need to organize anymore because the American public already agrees with us. But I can't think of something more damaging to the fight for Medicare for All than thinking that, because we're only like 5% of the way there or 10% of the way there when it comes to moving public opinion to support single payer.
Yes. While I may be a fan of those people you did bring up, I it doesn't stop me from being an individual. I can disagree, and that's one point
Yeah,
I
sure.
would disagree. Is that just because you're a fan of someone doesn't mean you 100% blindly agree. There's a difference between being a fan and just a, if I can say the word on your stream, simp.
Oh yeah, I.
Because I know
But
that
the thing
because
is,
I know that got banned off of Twitch. So
but you can see what the issue is when literally, yeah, it is off Twitch. No one watches on Twitch anyway. But if yeah. So when it comes to that issue, if everybody that is a leader to the movement, so Justin Jackson, Marianne Williamson, Breonna Joy Gray, Kyle Kalinske, Jimmy Dore, that guy that what is his name, Nick Brana or whatever, the People Party guy. If all of them are using the same exact argument, I need to bring that up in every conversation I have, because if those are the movement leaders for this force the vote movement, then I need the people who are following it. I need to know, like, are you along with this idea, this thought? Because they are teaching toxic things that are going to prevent progress in America if we have a disorganized left that thinks the job is already done. Especially when we're fighting capital owners that own 1/5 of the American economy, one of the highest GDP producing sectors, which is healthcare, of course.
Yes, and this is why I'm so glad that you allowed me to come on and do this talk back and forth, this dialogue, is because again, there's, as we both know, there's even with YouTube comments, which allows you to do more text than say Twitter, there's not much context you can give in a YouTube comment, especially if it's written like mine was in the heat of a moment, literally while watching a video. So whereas this, I can say that yeah, I do disagree with that idea that the organizing is done. No, in that instance, I say no. The organizing is far from done. We are taking on capital leaders who will fight tooth and nail to maintain their power. This is the fight we've chosen as leftists to get into, is to fight capital and capitalism itself, and to do so, we are dethroning what might as well be, especially if you look at Jeff Bezos' current bank account, might as well be ye olde time dukes and all that from the monarchy days. Um, uh, and look how many years was taken between the first person who thought up capitalism to it eventually taking over the monarchies. Like even to this day, Britain is still technically a monarchy because some people just don't want to give up that power. But the whole thing with that is like, yeah, it gets me. I agree with you on that specific issue that the organizing is done. It's not. We still have to organize. We still have to rally our base together and get as much power as we can if we are going to do meaningful change. The problem that I have is that I get the whole argument for what AOC is currently doing, which is backroom deals, but at the same time, it would be nice to see someone more than just Bernie Sanders on the floor of Congress actually saying stuff, like actually fighting for stuff. Because really, when was the last time these Justice Democrats have actually gone on the floor of the House and have openly, like Bernie Sanders, disagreed with I know Bernie Sanders is technically still an independent, but he did run twice as a Democrat in the presidential.
Well, AOC took a big hit politically by going against the CARES Act. She took a big stand against it and actually got a lot of shit for it within multiple parties, or both parties, and also in media. Like, she got a lot of garbage for what she said about the CARES Act. And I know Jimmy Dore wants to bring up, oh, I didn't hear a girl's voice when they were having the voice vote or whatever, but she took a lot of hits for her opposition to that. So she was a big player in that. And it was the time for the Senate. The bill passed the House really easily. So, of course, there's not going to be a big display in the House. We don't have power as progressives in the Senate whatsoever. And that's a big issue right now as well. So you're not going to see that other than Bernie Sanders being in the spotlight. And, of course, Bernie Sanders has been here for 30 years. These things take time to build up power. He has that power. He has that seasoning to do that effectively. Like, Nancy Pelosi, we know she is entrenched in big money. She's has a net worth of like $150 million. She's invested in technology and real estate and all that stuff. It took her 15 years to get to a leadership role within the party.
Yes, and I get what you're saying, but the problem is, just today, I know again you more likely don't like him because he was the spark, the person that sparked this. But one of the videos I did see from I don't know if it was Jimmy Dore or somebody else. I guess one of these lefty channels on YouTube that I watch did bring up the fact that in the 90s, Nancy Pelosi did actually advocate for a floor vote of not Medicare for all, but single payer healthcare. Versus now, that same Nancy Pelosi would not even dare even bring up single payer healthcare. And that's what I'm scared about is that if these Justice Democrats become too Washington brained, get too close to the backroom dealing and end up like Nancy Pelosi, where they start out being very good, advocating for single payer or
But
help
she was
Medicare
still
for
taking big
all,
money at
and
that
then
time, just like Hillary. There's a lot of nuance to this conversation. Like, she postured that position. She wasn't seriously for single payer or Medicare for all. Like, we understand that with Kamala Harris, she wasn't actually for single payer or Medicare for all. Like, Hillary, remember Hillary Care in 2008? Like, she went crazy on healthcare, and when she was first lady. It doesn't matter unless if they actually back it up. And the squad doesn't take big money contributions. They don't take speaking fees. I mean, I don't know why they'd be in politics if they didn't care with the abuse that they take. Being women of color, especially like Ilhan, and Cori Bush right now, they're taking freaking huge heat. And AOC is gonna get the most because she's the most popular leader. But yeah, just in general, we need progressives all throughout government. That means even Elizabeth Warren types, that means Andrew Yang types. Any progressive, even people who posture as progressives, are better than people who are openly moderate Dems. We need as many progressives as possible. And it's just the idea that the Force the Vote movement also became the anti-squad movement. We need to get them out. It seems so counterproductive. Like, people who have revolutionary ideology seem so. It's like the equivalence of a really socially awkward person going to a party. They just don't know what they're doing within this current government system, and they get pissed off when progress takes more than a couple years. Like, Kyle Kalinske saying the Justice Democrats were supposed to take over the party. Like, yes, that is the goal, but you can't take over the party with 0.9% of the actual numbers in the party. You can't literally just go and make demands on the floor. One, because not only because the political system is against you, but also because voters won't want that either. Like, unless if you want to be authoritarian about it, I'm not sure what your position is on that. But unless if you're authoritarian, you need to get consent from the public. Like, making these big gestures doesn't matter unless if the public is already on your side in some sense. I almost blew myself up, but yeah.
I was just going to say that no, in terms of the authoritarian question, I'm actually anti-authoritarian. My ultimate utopia, if you were to ask me, would be basically, I like to explain it like this for anyone who knows. For the super nerds and super dorks out there that do watch like Star Trek, not the new modern remake where they re-implemented like poverty on Earth, which was never a thing for the original Star Trek, but if you listen to how Earth is described in like Star Trek Next Generation, more along the lines of something like that. But if I could get my total utopia, something along the lines of that, but no government. Because I do have an anarchist side to me. I would love to see all hierarchies go away eventually. Obviously, we're not at that point, and more than likely, it's not going to ever get to that point even during my own lifetime. But that would be my utopia, because I am that authoritarian that I was just like, no, just get rid of all the hierarchies and let's just do everything horizontal instead of vertical like we're doing now. But in either case, with that, with the with talking on the floor or whatever, the reason why I would like to see more of that, I would like to see actual, not backroom dealings, but like actually like in the spot, like fighting for stuff, is because that's just it's more of just going with my type of personality. I would like to see more people, actually publicly fighting for this, not just privately backroom dealing. And what seems like for their vote, because 100% of all Justice Democrats did vote for Nancy Pelosi, that what seems like as of now, because we don't know what they totally got for their votes, is what it seems like as of now is just a simple rule change, which is to decouple Medicare for all and a few other things from PAYGO. But I just would like to see, like I said, more Bernie Sanders type, pounding on the podium and stuff like that, and saying we've got to fight for this because people are literally dying right now, and and it's like, oh, and it's great, Nancy, for you to advocate for various things, but like all those things you're currently advocating for would still require insurance companies, which it's kind of hard to have insurance when you literally do not have a job right now as of no fault of your own because of this pandemic we are currently in, because our president failed to handle it correctly.
But okay, so my question always is, how can we get consent of the party? How can we get power within the party? And we can't overestimate what the public opinion is, in favor of single payer because of what we might see from our inner circles and everything. So, for example, with healthcare, one of the reasons Obamacare's mandate, when they removed it, so many less people were insured, is because many Americans would rather not have healthcare than pay for it in any form. That's a big demographic that we don't know how to get to. Also, people who already have good healthcare, how do we get them to go on a plan like Medicare for All, which they don't trust when they already have decent healthcare? How do you get that consent? How do you get popular with people who are more conservative, who are, who love Nancy Pelosi? How do we do that exactly is my question. And forced to vote seems like a thing that actively hurts that goal. Bernie Sanders' role throughout his career is very different from what the squad is doing right now. Like trying to actually become the Democratic Party. And unless if you think there's going to be some big reform to third parties, I don't know if you're for third parties as anything other than like a organization wing or something. But unless if something crazy happens, this is how the American government works. And unless if you're for either authoritarian, either you're for like somewhat authoritarian measures, or you're for taking over the party, in my opinion, through consent of the voters. So that's my question for you. How do you get a voter who says, yes, Nancy Pelosi, oh yes, she is speaker again, yes, oh Kamala, oh woman of color, oh my god, she's oh my god, black and Asian, oh my goodness, wow, this is amazing, girl power, she's gonna be my president, oh Joe Biden, oh I love Uncle Joe Biden, he's so amazing, oh Bernie Sanders, Bernie Sanders is all right. The kids like him, but I don't know if I really like the radical change. How do you get somebody like that? Because that's who we need to, that's who we got to get. And that's a hard question, obviously. I don't expect a great answer. Like I'm still going for that. So
it's an extremely hard question, and my gut instinct as of right now, I know it sounds bad, but is to treat them as our political enemies. Because again, the reason I say that is because look at how well people like Trump have done, because that same exact argument could have been done for Donald Trump. Is, well, Donald Trump can't become president because he currently, he's gaslighting, and he's currently calling all these really popular Republican House members and senators all these bad things.
Liberals are different than conservatives, though. Don't you agree with that? Like when it comes to what liberals like versus what conservatives go towards, because liberals are civility based, but a lot of conservatives are fascist light. So when a strongman comes along, they like that. But liberals like civility, they like identity, they like all that gooey stuff. So like I think those two strategies can't be congruent in both situations. I'm not sure how that would apply. Like if Donald Trump was in the Democratic Party, he wouldn't be allowed to be in it. Like Bernie Sanders' numbers dropped whenever he did that to Biden, for example. That's why he didn't yell at Biden more, because when he yelled at people, his numbers went down. But yeah, I don't know.
Yes, that is true, and that's why ultimately I did vote for Biden this time, because one of the arguments that did win me over for Biden was
good.
What? I'm sorry, what?
No, I said you're a Biden voter. Good.
Yeah, no, I did vote for Biden. Don't take that away. I did vote for Biden. I did pull for Biden, but the reason why, like I said, the reason why was ultimately I got convinced by Vyche's argument, which is you give the liberals because his argument was actually true. The numbers bear it out. There was more popular swing for Bernie after 8 years of Obama than there was in 2020. And that's mainly due to the fact that the liberals got to see how bad that they were wrong. And what you do is with Biden, hopefully, he's going to do he's going to basically become a Obama 2.0. We can see that from his cabinet and everything. And the downside of that is that the liberals are going to see that they're not correct in this, that nothing's going to fundamentally change. Actually, more in some areas around the fringe, life is going to get actually worse. And they're not going to have Trump to blame. They're only going to be able to have themselves and their own ideas to blame, because, Biden is doing everything that they want him to do. Nancy Pelosi is doing everything that they want him to do. And yet life continues to get worse. So nothing is, and so eventually, hopefully after 8 years of Biden's administration, we can get people to start coming our way. Again, in that meantime, though, I would like to see actual opposition to the liberals, because to me, it's like I look at the liberals, and to me, it's like as of right now, I don't see them all that differently than conservatives, because we saw with Donald Trump that the problem with liberals is that they'll go fascist if that becomes popular. Like again, you can compare this to Nazi Germany of World War II and what happened to liberals there.
Do you think Pelosi
They
voters would like Donald Trump though? I don't know if that's like I don't know. I don't know if today's civility identity liberals are the same because a lot of it is class war. Like I think most of this
what
country is fiscally conservative, but it's really socially liberal and, socially
what
conservative.
what I was going with that is look at how many backroom deals Nancy Pelosi was comfortable making with Mitch McConnell and the Trump administration this entire 4 years, and that's my problem. It's like, okay, where was the actual fighting? Where was the actual, other than calling him a racist, other than words, where was the action? Where was the, okay, we're not doing any of this. Uh and that's my ultimate problem is that, for me, I don't look at liberals too kindly because I just go, you guys were way too comfortable with Trump, and that scares me.
Well, I would agree
Uh
with your argument about being nice if it was someone like Hillary Clinton, who's unpopular with every demographic of every party in the world. But like Nancy Pelosi, for example, she's really popular in the popular. I think somebody said I said popular wrong. I'm gonna keep saying popular. I like saying that. It's my poor Cold Town slang. All right, but she's really popular in in the Democratic Party, which hurts the idea of just going like, "Oh, you are evil. You are the corrupt war criminal." Like, I think that would actively hurt progressives. Like, my opinion is progressives should be playing real nice with Pelosi. So whenever she messes up, you're like, "Oh, wait, but I have the better ideas," over and over and over again. Because liberals respond to that stuff, and especially when we have women of color advocating for these positions as well. Of course, some of them are gonna be, against all that identity talk after, once it comes to actually having to support like AOC. A lot of those liberals are gonna turn against it. Um, but yeah, I think hanging around and being like the rebound. Oh, I went down. Dang it, in the zombies game. But yeah, being like I know it's bad to compare it to like a relationship, but being um, the rebound person, like sticking around the relationship until liberal voters break up with Pelosi. I think it needs to be natural. I think it needs to be a foundational. I think if it happens, liberals are going to arrive to that conclusion by themselves. I don't think they're really going to be led there when it comes to like force of opposition from progressives. Unless if Nancy Pelosi, for example, if she went against $2,000 checks, I think that's something you could take a big stance on, something really popular. But yeah, it's really, it depends on what the issue is, what the policy is, who the politician is. The squad's current strategy of playing nice their first terms in as freshman congresswomen, I think they're walking a good line between being too oppositional and also being too oppositional and also being nice to the party at the same time. They're doing a good job walking in between it, without being too like anti-democrat, and also because AOC took a lot of crap for her endorsing down ballot progressives. Oh my gosh, she took so many political hits because of that. Huge hits. That's probably the main reason she didn't get on the one committee. Um, but her popularity translates to good endorsements. Those progressives getting her endorsements are going to have such a higher chance to win. And I think her being popular with normal liberals is one of the biggest abilities that she has to help progressivism. It doesn't need to be being Bernie Sanders 24/7. There's going to be another Bernie Sanders coming, of course, but their role and what they're doing, I think, is pretty masterful for their experience and everything as of right now. I think they're doing a decent job.
yeah. My whole thing with that is I just tend to agree with others who have a distaste for working with Nancy Pelosi, because in the end, I do agree with the argument that she's just going to stab you in the back. Like everything that
I don't
that
care about her
that
though.
AOC, like, but you just keep bringing up like, well, we can't openly advocate against her because she's too popular. It's like, yeah, great, she's really popular, but she's also a person that stabs every progressive in the back when it comes
Well, I
down
don't
to
care
it.
about her.
Now,
I care about her voters, though. I'm not talking about her or making deals with her. I don't care about Nancy Pelosi. I care about the people who vote for her that might vote for us eventually. Yeah, I don't care about that. I don't think Pelosi is a good person or she's ever going to do something good for us.
okay, good. At least we can agree on that, because I was just going to bring up the fact that, like, yeah, like working with these centrist Democrats, like, really disgusts me, because we see how much they how much they're worth, especially when you have like Bernie Sanders at least try to do the $2,000 check thing, and then immediately Chuck Schumer, who literally just got done talking about he supports Bernie's plan, immediately turned around and voted with Mitch McConnell to do the veto-proof vote on the defense bill, which by stalling that could have given the Democrats ammo to fight for
So you want them to be
$2,000
mad
check.
about that and like bring it up to voters that they did that?
I would, yeah, like what I would like is I would like for them to at least acknowledge it, like instead of just completely relying on independent networks like the Young Turks to bring it up in a single news piece. Um, I like for some acknowledgement that we got massively stabbed in the back, and that it could be directly blamed on people like Chuck Schumer for the reason why we're not currently getting $2,000
I mean,
checks.
that
Because
works good for people who pay attention to politics a lot, but people are usually pretty normy. They like politicians as figures. It's a popularity contest. So, like, bringing that stuff is great, but, like, at this point, we're not adding any support by doing that. Because, like, if it was a direct... Okay, say Chuck Schumer directly voted against $2,000, great. But once it gets into the complicated math of political capital and throwing away a defense vote that could have been held hostage to get the $2,000 checks passed, at that point, most voters, their brains will shut off, honestly. I mean, I don't know if you'd agree with that or not, but...
that's when again it's your job to break it down and explain very simple, because it really is a very simple concept that we are not permanently blocking defense. This money, this defense bill will pass, just not right now. Let's hold it for now as ammo to fight for $2,000, so we can do both at the same time. We can pass the defense bill and all that. Again, you're not going out there and saying we're not going to give the military money. You can still tell your voters we're giving the military money. We're not like, it's not like the bill's dead. It's just on pause while we talk to this raving man over here for whatever reason doesn't want to give you guys more money to help pay for your rent that is ever increasing every month. And so that's my whole point. And then and then you're like, oh, you want to go after their voters. Okay. Well, how else to convince your voters than go, Chuck Schumer, the guy you voted for, definitely not working for you. He did everything he possibly could when the camera was not on him to make sure you did not get that $2,000 lifeline that could have potentially helped you out.
But the organization isn't there yet for that direct. That's more of a direct action media campaign that has to be ran by local organizers. And like, if we establish some type of local unions, like our media infrastructure simply isn't there yet. People are going to hear, oh, Bernie Sanders is speaking out against Chuck Schumer and blaming him for the money when Mitch McConnell's holding it up. That's what most voters are going to think. Like, we are political junkies. We know, what's happening and how it's operating. But most people are going to be, watching this like, oh, wait, Bernie's just going against Chuck Schumer, but Chuck Schumer's not the issue. Mitch McConnell is. I just don't think that would really play well with Democratic voters when it comes to something like that, because it's a little bit complicated. There's no way to really get it straight to people's ears in a way that's going to be listened to in a great way, because people are very casual in American politics. We don't really get into it too much.
And that also ultimately comes down to it is that's also kind of something that I would love to help fight for, and in my tiny way I am doing that. I told you before I came on in one of my comments that I'm going to post this later on my own podcast, because of the fact that in my own tiny way, as much as I can, I'm trying to help people to get informed about politics, because it very is important. And that the only way our democracy even works is by people understanding politics. You can go back to the writings of our founding fathers. They would have never wanted uninformed voters to vote. That was kind of the point. They want people to understand what is going on and what they are voting for. And that's my ultimate problem, is that we failed as a country by just going, yeah, no, you don't have to learn anything. You don't have to understand how government works. Civics, what's that?
But we're not there yet, though. So our strategy should be in accordance with where the people are, right? Or should it not be? Because if the people aren't there yet, how would the strategy work if they already don't understand the principles? And by the way, they did argue didn't want low information voters voting. They used that as an argument to keep peasants from voting, but or non-landowners from voting. But I do agree that is a core tenet of a stable democracy, and that is a big concern, and a valid concern that they had, with giving the democratic process more, making it more open to more people.
Obviously, I'm not. You will never catch me as a person, so don't misconstrue me. Please, I do not want my words misconstrued. So I'll clarify it. I'm not a person that's ever in favor of getting rid of someone's vote. I truly do believe that if you're an American, you have the right to vote. Period. End of discussion.
Oh no, I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
But what I'm getting at is, I would just prefer, if given an option between the two, that we had at least some sort of basic education. This is where it comes down to public education. This is why I feel like that's something that I would love to see get fixed, is our public education system get fixed so that you can at least have a basic education on how the government works, and not just patriotism, and looking at the flag with stargazing eyes. You actually understand how this government works and how voting works and why voting is important. Because this whole problem that we're currently having, I agree with you, is because it would be so much easier to convince people if they just understood basic things about the government, and how Nancy Pelosi sounds great if you're not paying attention, and not paying attention to every time she turns around and actually stabs not only fellow Democrats in the back, but her own voters in the back, by working hand and feet with the Republicans to do something really terrible. And that's why, like, I will fully agree. The reason why I was for forced vote mainly was due to emotions, because I just disgust, because I agree with you, it's because I'm a political junkie. I just have a heavy disgust for people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. I could not be in the same room with them without scowling at them. Like I would, I just couldn't. Like, I could not. Like, I just couldn't be in the same room with them. It would be bad.
Well, that's my main concern though with all these people, is that they are being ruled by more emotion than objective fact around the topic. But you did note you are definitely, I will give you credit, you are definitely the most reasonable person that I have talked to about this topic, especially when considering like where public opinion actually is. You do seem to understand where it is, so that is something I can give you some good credit for.
I'm not stupid. I'm not.
Are you
stupid.
saying they are stupid? Then are you saying Kyle Kalinske is stupid?
No, I'm not saying these people. I'm not saying these people are stupid. I'm saying that everyone's different, and you can say this. I'm one of those naive kids that still believes, even at 25 years old, in the idea that everyone should be treated as an individual and not treated as this, as this collective thing. That's one of the things I do agree with conservatives is slightly individualism. Collectivism when it works when it works, but when you come down to it, if you actually ask people, like we're having this discussion right now, you'll find out that, while I may agree with people like Kyle Kalinske and a lot of things, I don't agree with him on 100% of things. Nor do I with anybody else. My opinions are mine, and I just tend to come down with the whole thing of, while I do understand, and it sucks how the current system works, it's just that emotionally, I would like to see more, more outside in front of the camera advocating for this stuff than backroom dealing behind closed doors, where none of us can really see what's going on. None of us voters for people like AOC actually get to see the transcripts of what she's advocating for. So we have no idea what was said to AOC, and we can't hold anybody's feet to fire, because all we know is, there were some backroom deals, and it looks like as of right now, again, this could definitely change when we hear more, but as of right now, all we know definitely is that all the squad got for their vote for Nancy Pelosi is a rule change, and that's it. Which doesn't look very well, especially when you go to your voters who are currently, still dealing with everything that's going on in this country because of this pandemic and massive homelessness crisis that's about to befall us. and say, look, everyone, I got you a rule change.
Well, without the rule change, the PAYGO exempt the PAYGO literally says you need to pass if you want to pass a bill or even consider a bill, you need to have a way to pay for it through either tax hikes or through spending reductions. So like Medicare
Yeah,
for All and the Green New Deal, they can't even
which
talk about it, and they got that done. They now it's available to even be discussed. They can start operating and pushing for committees and different things to look into how to implement something like single payer healthcare. So that is a pretty big thing. Like in the 40s and 50s, a lot happened in the government to make room for what eventually was like the civil rights movement. There were a lot of people who were what would the term be, or desegregationists, who did a lot of good in the government. And although it isn't always going to be like a big,
yeah,
moment like in front of a camera, I don't think that really matters, especially if that isn't politically expedient at that time. I think there is a time and place for everything. I don't know if you play Pokemon, but that's what Professor Oak says. There's a time and place
yeah.
for everything, but that that time isn't now.
But and that's and speaking of time, that's something that I would definitely like to get answered. But is when I because one of the things I do agree with Kyle Quincy is when I hear people from your side of the aisle, the more strategic side of leftism, is when would be a good time to fight for Medicare for all? Because my ultimate thing is what is the timeline like? Uh, because
I think we
you
are
could
fighting for it though.
you the problem, well, because my whole thing is you could have made an argument in the 60s that it's definitely not the right time it's definitely not the right time for the Civil Rights Act. Let's wait until the 70s. Okay, it's not the right time. Let's wait until the 80s. Like, you
But
could
there
have
were
done this
millions of people
forever.
in the streets. That's a different kind of political capital that the leaders of the movement were able to use. You can't really compare that to what's happening now when Americans don't even come out for $2,000 checks. Healthcare is like the last thing Americans would actually riot for or organize for. We need the labor organization first. We need the union and worker participation first before
Yeah,
we can make a big event like this. The civil rights movement, like we can't really compare it. And I just want to say one thing. I know you didn't say this, but I hate it when freaking when Kyle Kalinske says, if you were in Missouri back in the '60s and you said you're for desegregation, you're for the Civil Rights Act, people would laugh at you. I don't know if you heard him say that, but I think it's
yeah,
amazing that he says in the '60s, if you advocate for pro-black issues, then people would simply laugh at you in the South. Oh my God, they'd probably oh my God, you'd have the entire town threatening to lynch you with your black brothers in that town, and sisters, of course. Like yeah, oh my God, he's so class reductionist a lot of times. I don't think he does it on purpose, but I mean it's really I just think that's funny. But yeah, carry on with
yeah.
your point. Sorry for bringing up that aside, but
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, it really just, again, my whole point is it just worries me that if you keep pushing this off, then you can just, because I have this unhealthy thing of being a procrastinator. I was one of those people in high school and stuff that put the pro in procrastination and everything. So I myself struggle with this, and it's like I don't want to see that happen with very important things that could literally save millions and potentially, if you count it up over time, hundreds of years, billions of trillions of lives. Uh, and it's like, and you just keep pushing it off until eventually, at some point, it's politically convenient. Like at some, like, because even in the 1960s, even with the Million Man March and all that stuff, as you brought up, it's like, oh, there's all this political capital. Yeah, but but also the Million Man March and stuff like that didn't stop anybody from getting literally hosed by the police and everything. So even in the 1960s, as much as you might disagree, the Civil Rights Act was still controversial and risky.
yeah, it was, yeah,
Uh,
but it's different.
so,
Like when you have
so
that
that's
behind you, though.
that's my point. Is that in the '60s you could have made that exact argument, and I guarantee that exact argument was made by some in Congress at the time. It's just not right now.
But it's
But
possible. Okay, sorry. Finish your point, please.
I'm just going to say that the reason I know that. I know it sounds crazy because again that's civil rights for blacks versus Medicare for all, but the reason I bring that up is because again I that's my ultimate problem with the whole it's not the right time argument. Is then my question becomes, then when is the right time?
There's no
Well,
magical portal though that would, you know, say that Medicare for All would happen faster. There's a reality in which forced to vote is what makes Medicare for All a thing that is less likely to happen. Like right now, guaranteed, 100%, I am completely confident in saying this. Jimmy Dore is actively hurting the cause for Medicare for All by attacking the squad the way he is, and he's getting 20,000 viewership, and he's not influential, but he's talking to enough people to have a ripple effect. And I'm starting to hear about it a little bit in real life now about how bad he is. He's actively hurting the cause for Medicare for All. Just because you're aggressive doesn't mean you're not procrastinating. The thing that is hard to do right now, the easy way out is to force the vote. The easy way out is to force the vote. The hard thing to do is to keep on organizing and develop labor unions, like Alphabet Inc. just did with Google, with school boards, with local progressives on city councils. That's the hard thing, and that's the only way this policy is ever going to happen. It's never going to happen. There's not going to be a defining moment in this movement if it does take root. It's not going to be like, okay, here's the big speech that changed it all. Like this isn't how progressive movements have ever been successful throughout global or world history. I don't read theory, but I'm pretty sure all those old guys spoke about how the change needs to be gradual in a sense. Unless if you're someone that advocates for permanent revolution, which seems like that's something that you'd be for.
Side of me, like I said, I am a revolutionary because I aim to be honest, and so I am a person that would definitely be a comrade on the front lines if there was a open violent revolution. But that doesn't seem to be the case right now because Americans are not the global South. We're not the type that would fight for that. We're not the Russians before the U.S. Before the creation of the USSR. So we're not the type that would do that. Unfortunately, even our founding fathers would agree with that because they agreed that if government became too corrupt, you would have to just destroy it and start over. But the whole thing is with the whole thing with this is that again, like I said, I openly agree it's an emotional thing. I just would rather see actual like speeches, actual open calls for action to support these things because I do view them as important. And I just don't want to see like, okay, well, we're going to have to wait another 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years to get Medicare for all, or even single payer, because again, it's like Nancy Pelosi has again said she's for single payer, and so did Biden. But it's like, honestly, looking at their track record and looking at their current, especially Biden's administration, where he's just failing up his administration with corporate executives, I don't even think single payer is even going to get passed. So,
Well, if it's not going to get
so that's
passed in the next 4 years guaranteed because Biden won't pass it, then we should be playing for the long game, though. We're not trying to force it through right now. We're trying to gain public opinion. And everything that we do right now should be disciplined and, with that goal. I don't care about making a point as much as I care about making progress overall when it comes to the movement. I used to be like that a little bit. I was a Bernier buster a year ago. But now I'm much more measured, and that's why I'm focusing on like my channel is basically now I focus on like pragmatic or like pragmatism in politics and progressivism mixed with pragmatism because there is too much idealism and emotional based thinking on the left, which hinders it a lot. But yeah.
And hopefully this discussion has given you because I could easily see myself going down the same road given enough time and being beaten down enough. I could see myself going down the same road of just becoming a pragmatist, because right now it's just there's that just fire burning in me to be a firebrand and a revolutionary, whereas right now I could easily see myself because of how much this government does beat you down, to just end up being a pragmatist and be like, okay, we have to work behind the scenes. We have to get incremental stuff done. Instead of rather seeing like a I have a dream speech, but for Medicare for all. Um, uh, it's just like I said. It's just to me. That's just my emotional thing, really, for me. That's what my comments to you were out of my emotions because I am a hugely emotional type person. uh my emotional side of my brain is a lot bigger, more active than my logical side and rational side. um and so that's my ultimate problem is when I see things that look not all that impressive at the end of the day. And it's like, okay, great. I agree with you. The rule change for Pago was great, but it's like, but Pago should have never been a thing. But it was an idea cooked up by the centrist Democrats, and they were allowed to get away with it because, again, nobody stops them.
Well, there's no way to. Their biggest power is money and people. We need to steal their people, and the only way to steal their people isn't going to be to like if someone is a fan of their personalities or who they are or what they represent, being adverse to them doesn't really help in the goal of progress or gaining their voters or gaining power within the party. That's my whole thing. Like, I mean, if this would help us get like going against Hillary, like I said, would be great. But the leaders that we talk about today, like Pelosi, and this is another misunderstanding people have with Pelosi's approval, she's actually really, 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 really popular within, like, she sucks nationally, of course, but within the party, she has like a 2/3 approval rating. And by the way, if anyone is listening to this either on YouTube or during the stream, I know someone brought up to me that the actual polling numbers for Pelosi were 53% because, so if you ask voters if they like Pelosi, 70% will say favorable. But if you ask, should she be Speaker of the House still? 53% will say yes. 30% will say no. So people tried using that against me to say like, oh, Pelosi isn't popular, only 53%. But that's how many people thought she should stay Speaker, not how many people like her. And also, that's still a majority, so I don't know what point that person was making to me, but I just wanted to bring that up quick because I hear that a lot. But yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard that stat too. That stat does give me hope though, because it does show that her approval rating is dropping, and that more. And the greatest thing that we have is that when you look, and I'm hoping that you're seeing this is the same that I'm seeing, which is the younger generations seem to be more extreme. If you're a young conservative, you tend to be extremely like alt-right type, or if you're a young leftist, you're like far left. I'm not seeing a whole lot of like Generation Z like centrist liberals. I'm not seeing a lot of yuppie types in the generation after, that was born after
Yeah,
me.
when it comes to
Is what
people who
I'm
are paying
getting at,
attention to
and I'm
politics,
getting.
but people who are not engaged right now, who are young, are probably going to be more liberal minded, and they do like Bernie and AOC and stuff because that's what other people like their age category. I'm just saying, like we're waiting. It's going to be another 10, 15 years before universal healthcare is even going to be seriously considered in America. I mean, like when it comes to actually being feasible to pass. We're waiting for a generational movement to take place, and I don't think we should fumble that ball because the young people today are going to be very progressive. They're going to love AOC. They're going to love Bernie Sanders. These people are icons. These people are generational leaders that are to the like. It's hard to see where they measure up right now, but Bernie Sanders is going to be remembered in history. So yeah, importantly, like he's going to be remembered in a very positive light. Because of what he's done for this world. If our if our world survives long enough for us to rewrite the history books, of course, in the proper way. But like we are just waiting for this progress to take place, and I don't think we need to be defeatist about it and say, okay, well, if we're not going to get it now, may as well just push for it. And even if we lose, at least we like did something. I don't really agree with that form of like that
Like I
approach.
said, yeah, and I get where, again, like I said, I get where you're coming from. It's just that like I just find it. I just find it a little. I just find it a little hard to believe that, for example, like I brought up way earlier in this debate, that the Republicans could try like 50, 60 times to appeal Obamacare, and but whereas if we fail once with Medicare for all, then it's done, and it's like, okay, well, why can't we do what they did and just keep trying because it only needs to pass once? Instead of just packing up and saying we tried once and that's it. That's all we've got. Uh, whereas you turn to the other side and they're like, if we fail, we try again, and it doesn't matter because it doesn't matter how crazy it is. We'll try to repeal Obamacare 100 times if that's what it takes. And so that's my ultimate problem. Is I would like to see people what I'm getting at is I want to see fighters. I want to see people that actually back up, put their money where their mouth is, so to speak, and back up what they're saying, and not just be like, yeah, I'm for Medicare for all, and just use that as a campaign slogan, and not actually do anything with that.
But they are doing stuff. Every person they endorse is a big deal. With AOC's popularity and like Bernie Sanders' popularity, with normie voters, you don't want their endorsement to be toxic when it comes to a moderate district. Progressives right now are winning in plus 50 Democratic districts. That's not going to do it. We're going to need to win in actual contested areas and in a big way. And we got to be popular with these liberal voters. Um, it's it's just about appealing to as many voters as possible, getting that political capital from them, because we're not going to get it from big money. We're not going to get it from Washington connections or media connections. So we're going to need to get it from only the people. So it needs to be about addition and not subtraction based on principle or values. And like I just don't think it's the best way to get Democratic voters based on the predisposition of liberals in general, how they act, what they respond to. They don't respond to anger very well. They don't respond to radical ideas very well. So you have to like ease them into a system they don't even know they agree with yet.
I would say I agree with you, but then I immediately think of like, oh, they don't agree with anger, and yet they are constantly like the most popular news and entertainment things are nothing but people who are angry. Like again, like the one of the most successful quote unquote liberal or leftist, whatever. I don't even call it a leftist; it's more liberal. Like TYT, like entire brand is anger and jank yelling at the top of his
But
lungs and everything.
TYT is like a little mouse compared to the wolf of actual media. Like TYT is a microcosm of what media really is. Hassan had 260,000 people watching on election day, and he only had 3% of total coverage on election day when it comes to, which is good for someone who's
Yeah.
independent, who's a streamer. But it's still like we're not even close to being like when it comes to regular media. These people are all about virtue signaling on CNN and MSNBC. This is what they love. They
Yeah.
love this stuff. They love the identity politics. It's just what they like. And yeah, they're not going to
Yeah,
change.
and that's like I said, that's the problem is that we've got people in this country who are more fond of identity politics and not actual policy positions, which is really disgusting to see. Because you see these people all the time, like you just said about like on MSNBC and CNN, talking about how much they love supporting this or that for blacks, but not actually do anything that would meaningfully actually improve the lives of black people overall, because that might tip the apple cart a little too far for their capitalist overlords and
But isn't
advertisers.
that pretty congruent to what you said about your emotions being put over logic? They're putting their emotions over logic too. They want to see, they want to be happy about soccer and wine and, what race a
Yeah.
person is and if they're a woman or
Yes.
not. The female drone
Yes.
pilots.
Yes. And definitely you can call me a hypocrite for that. But at least the stuff that I am emotionally fired up for is stuff that would meaningfully actually affect people, and not just we repainted like a black school, or we renamed a school from a what was it, like the Lee High School that turned to Liberty High School. So all that is great, but like at least the stuff that I get angry about would actually meaningfully affect people and improve people's lives pretty
They
drastically.
think that
And
too.
instead of
Well, it doesn't. Okay, if it's
yeah,
about the ending though. Like,
they,
if I
sorry,
know that imperialism is evil and I know that capitalism is bad, just because I'm not advocating for overthrowing capitalism doesn't mean I'm not for helping people's lives. Like, if you are more there, if you're more to the left, if you're more anti-capital than a voter, but they are better at actually producing results to improve voters' lives, I feel like they have the moral whatever right there. Like they're morally above that position that you're taking because although you know all the right answers, if you can't actually implement anything, if you can't actually help anybody, that seems like like why? What's even the point about like
well,
what's the point of ideas if you can't put it into action?
yeah, well, again, that's where I disagree with you. Because I just generally don't want to see myself as a defeatist. Even if you're the only person that believes in an idea, does it, like for me it's like it goes back to the whole definition of truth.
But if you can't actually help anybody, what's the point of
Even if
believing something?
100% of the human population, even if 100% of all Homo sapiens on the
Hello? You cut out. I don't know if you still hear me.
Doesn't stop me from.
Yeah, so you cut
I
out for
still hear
about
you.
10
Can you hear
seconds.
me?
You cut out for about 10
Hello.
seconds. Yeah, can you hear me again?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, you cut out for like 10 seconds before I said that. So you could
Oh,
just restart, all right?
I'm sorry.
You're
What
good.
I was trying to say is that it just goes back to the like if you have no way of implementing an idea, then what's the point? Well, again, there also that also goes back to the to morals and philosophicals. And my whole thing is, I don't really like, at a certain point, it just doesn't go with I just don't care because my whole thing is like even if 100% of people didn't agree that gravity existed, doesn't mean that gravity doesn't exist. Things you can believe a lie. It doesn't make it true. Uh, so the whole thing is like with this, it's like yeah, I would still fight and advocate for what I believe in, even if I was the only one doing it, because I'm just not a defeatist in
No, what I'm
that way.
saying is, if Pete Buttigieg can get a public option passed, but you can't get anything done for anyone, then Pete Buttigieg is morally above you because he found a way to actually help improve people's material conditions, through their actions, and they actually even the great theorists, wrote and they recommended reading to inform their positions on things, not to only read it and envision an idea. It was actually how to act and how to attack the current system as well, and how to understand the flow of capital and the power structures in our society, so that you can correctly operate within those limits and those constraints.
Yes, but but also going back to your point of like, well, these liberals would say that they've done things to meaningfully affect people. I would say if you actually set them down, you can actually get them to potentially maybe not in the first sit down, but after a couple of sit downs, explain to them very thoroughly that in all reality, they've only really done things on the edges. They've never really done anything. It's like, okay, great. What does changing a high school's name from Lee to Liberty do to like the poor black person? Like honestly, like you changed the high school's name. You did something. Pat yourself on the back. And then you immediately turn around and continue to ignore them like you've had for the past
Well,
decades and
yeah, I
decades and
agree
decades.
that's bad, but at least they did something. Like Obama, the ACA sucks, but if Obama wasn't president, we'd probably have no healthcare reform. If he didn't run, we probably don't have anything passed. Hillary probably goes through her 4 years, doesn't get anything done, ends up going to the Romney Care plan anyway, the Heritage plan anyway, even if she ran on a more universal model. And if Obama wasn't president, the ACA wouldn't have been done. Therefore, the material conditions of Americans would be, worse off. Even if we had someone who was more, ideally there, I think it's all about pragmatism. But I think I'm more of a consequentialist when it comes to that.
Yes, and that's the thing is unlike others, I'm definitely not a consequentialist or anything like that. I just tend to believe that there could have been more done. Again, Obama was given 8 years, and you're telling me that all he could have done was what was basically just a rewritten Romney care.
No,
No.
I agree he sucked,
No.
but if Bernie was president, he probably gets no healthcare reform passed. If he was president during Obama's term, I don't think he gets anything passed, honestly, unless if he would do a huge compromise to get the Joe Manchins of the world to agree with him. Like this is even if Bernie Sanders won this election, single-payer healthcare would only be marginally moved forward in the policy ideas of Americans. Like he'd have the bully pulpit, but it wouldn't. Like people's mental models are in a very specific place, and they need to be. You got to treat people's minds like their children. Sometimes when it comes to influencing public opinion. And just because if we have a president or whatever, that's not gonna happen. It's not gonna be enough. It needs to be a groundswell of this mental change, this societal change, like I was saying, that allows for this to happen, or that consent will never be in place. And there's no, like I know, people call like Kalinsky an authoritarian sometimes because no matter what, he would do Medicare for all, even if people did not agree with it. But I don't think it's going to work through means like that. I think for Medicare for all to even work properly, it's going to need to have checks and balances ran by the people as well. Like a government plan can fail just as easily as it can be successful. It's probably more likely to not be good, especially at the start. If you look at Canada, and their universal health care. They had one of the largest and most organized labor forces in America, not American, in Canadian history at that time. And even the implementation of their universal model didn't go exactly super smooth. There were a lot of protests. The capital owners made sure that a lot of civil unrest happened. So there'd be big hurdles. We need that societal consent first for any of this to work. Green New Deal, any of this. So as far as right now is concerned, I think our progressive politicians at the top, their job is to manage inside politics as much as possible, be a lesser of two evils, try to get everything as good as possible, get the climate plans as good as possible, at least to match it up to France and Germany, which Biden's plan is matched up, and they're pretty much the world leaders in green energy. That $2 trillion plan isn't terrible. Keep on doing that and keep on supporting people from the outside to get inside, while at the same time encouraging union membership organization like Bernie Sanders is doing, because that's what it's gonna take. If that doesn't happen first, I don't think this country's ever gonna see any form of universal health care. And even if it does happen, I think we're gonna end up with a multi-payer system, not a single-payer system, when it's all said and done.
Yeah, yeah. That's the thing is, like I said, I just, as naive and maybe as backwards as I may be coming off, like I said, I just hope that you understanding and your viewers understand that I'm not coming at this from the wrong place. I do want what you want, is what it sounds like you want, which is Medicare for all. It's just that obviously I might be a little impatient because I would rather it now, especially when I'm seeing people drop like flies, than later. Because it's
But
just
no matter what, it's not gonna happen now, right? Or
like like I said, I just tend to agree with the others, which is that while you may say it's not going to happen, my whole thing is that it definitely would have if people were more for it. And what I'm getting at is like more forceful for it, because again, it's like no one is really like, who really is on the floor right now, constantly bringing up the fact that thousands of people are dying every single day, and that when was the last time Nancy Pelosi actually fully admitted that all of her little implications or little things that she can do to help fix insurance companies doesn't really do much when basically no one has insurance anymore, unless you're well off or had a job that could have easily been transferred over to the home. Because as of right now, a lot of the lower income people that were just barely hanging on to insurance through their jobs don't have it anymore. And so all the stuff that Nancy Pelosi is advocating for to help people that currently have insurance doesn't really work when more and more people every day don't have health insurance anyway. And so that's my ultimate problem: is where are the calls to Nancy Pelosi, and where are the advocates saying, hey, look, that's great that you want to help the insurance companies, but that doesn't help when no one has insurance
well, that's
anyway.
not gonna happen without the support first. There's steps to this. There's levels to it. You have to start off at the base and get the foundation before you push for what you want. But if you're not gonna move off the moral position of just acting off of principle, then we're not gonna come to an agreement, because that's not gonna be. You're not going to be able to really confront the logical, like you said, the logic of it.
Yes. And I know, I admit what I am. I'm very flawed. There's a lot to this government I don't understand. There's a lot to this work, to how things work, that I don't understand. And I fully admit, because I do want to fully admit before anyone has to comment on the archive of this video or whatever, I am emotional. This is coming completely from my emotional side of my brain. This is not logical. This is not rational. I completely understand that. And so I don't want anyone to misconstrue me and be like, oh, that's pie in the sky, or that's emotional. It's like, yeah, I fully understand that. I understand that I'm coming off as irrational and all that stuff. And the more rational side is to do it slow, do it basically like a chess game. You move, they move, all that stuff. But at the same time, it's just hard for me as a naturally empathetic person that I am to look around this world, in this country that I'm currently living in, and see people dropping like flies, and basically in large steps nobody's doing anything about it.
But okay, if
That's
you're
my
actively not doing what's going to get us Medicare for all sooner, then you're not doing anything about it. You are not doing anything about it by being adverse to the logical conclusions of what's going to get us closer to that goal. Aren't you going against your own logic here when you say like, "Oh, I'm going to be about helping people, but then I'm not going to do what's going to help people because I'm going to let if you let emotion, overthrow your sensibility to actually create progress, isn't that really adverse to what you claim to be advocating for at that point?"
Yes, that's definitely true, and that's why, like I said, that's why I have no problem eating humble pie. By the way, I have no problem learning. Again, I'm only 25 years old, which can seem old to people younger than me, but the people older than me know that that's not old at all. And so I have a lot more life experience to gain than where I currently am. And again, this is literally my first debates like this. I've tried to get on Vosh's show, but he dodged me. So this is my first time. I know I would have made a fool of myself on his show as well. No matter whose show I ended up on, I was going to make a fool of myself. We've all have a starting point. We all have somewhere. If you go back far enough, the people that are thought of as thought leaders didn't begin. It's like, do you really think that that Martin Luther King Jr. started out as eloquent as he became later in life? No, I guarantee he had stumbling blocks along the way as well. We all have, so we all have things to learn. And this entire debate, I had a feeling that, yeah, more than likely I was going to have to eat humble pie, and more than likely I was probably wrong about these things because I fully understand the logical side of my brain is telling me that I'm being too emotional about this. It's just that, like I said, it's just I can't ignore the empathetic side of my brain where it's just like I just want to see something happen. Maybe even if it's again, I just want to see something happen where we see I see this country actually doing something to take care of the people that are currently dying, instead of we give them vaccines and then we bungle the vaccine rollout. It just it's frustrating. It's what it is.